Okay, so officially we just need to call the meeting to order. It's 5:32. One of the things that we have to do is elect positions, and one of them is the person that takes the minutes. But I'll do it for this meeting. You get it out. So thanks all for joining the Finance Committee, and Tom for coming or staying on the Finance Committee. Tom's a lone member that's been there. How long has it been, Tom? Has it been over a year?
Yeah, just over a year.
Yeah. And it kind of members left. I think it was because of the process and the new budget process and review. I think there was a lack of inclusion for the Finance Committee in the whole process earlier on, which is not a good thing. So we've got to correct that as we go forward. Am I stating that correctly, Tom?
I honestly can't. I think John may have left because of that, but I think that one of the other folks had work issues that prevented him from really being at the meetings, and then I'm not sure about one of the others.
I guess we should go around. I don't know if everybody knows everybody. We should probably go around, just introduce themselves, and if you want to do a little background. And ladies first, Barbara, if you don't mind.
Barbara Dunn-Szymborski, or Barbara Broder-Szymborski. I'm a former school teacher, taught business, did some interesting things with the stock market with my students, and just thought I should volunteer to help. Hopefully I can do something good for the city, town, excuse me.
Thank you. I guess we'll go alphabetically. Adam.
Yeah, hi. Adam Cephalo, just recently joined, volunteered my time. I understood there was some openings here until September, so to fill the board, as Matt Rowland had asked if I would be more happy to help, and I'm obviously more than willing. Background in finance, and so, see where I can contribute.
Thanks. And Ken?
Yes, I also was asked to participate. My background is I've been a community banker or retired now, but was a community banker for over 40 years, and specializing in or concentrating in finance and management. So it's been a few years, a lot of water under the bridge, but I'd like to see if I can help out.
Thanks. All right.
Grew up in Haydenville, Hampshire Regional, third class, 1974. My wife was 75. Undergraduate at AIC, MBA at AIC. Retired from Easthampton Savings Bank. After 20 years, started the wealth management division for the bank, and retired there last year, but started my own practice in Easthampton. Have lived in town, married the mailman's daughter. I've lived in town since 1996, and she's been here almost her whole life. So.
Unmute Tom, please, Ed.
He's muted.
Yeah, we got to unmute you, Tom.
Yes.
Ed has the power to unmute everybody.
All right, is that better? Okay. Tom Livingston.
If you mute yourself, I'm going to have to let you back in to unmute you. That's all. So okay. I'll just let you know that. I'll try to pay attention.
No problem. Tom Livingston, been resident of the town for 3 years, been on the committee for a year as a writing candidate. I work for a large aerospace company in Connecticut as a project manager, and that's about it.
Large aerospace company. I remember that in my early days in engineering, Sikorsky and Pratt Whitney and all those.
Right.
So I'll go ahead. John Martin, I'm on the select board, retired late last year from the University of Massachusetts admin and finance group after 20 years. Actually, I've been consulting there, still doing that now for about 12 hours a week. It seems you can't walk away from the university. They keep you on for a while, so I still enjoy that. And Ed, you're the only staff member here. Do you want to give your background?
Oh, God, I don't know if I want to go there. Let's see. Undergraduate, Western New England, master's degree in finance, Western New England. Very varied background. Let's see, I spent 5 years on the Finance Committee in West Springfield. That's how I got interested in local government. I spent 19 years in the hardware industry, working and managing a small hardware store. When I was close to getting my master's degree, I left there and went to work for Aetna and the finance end of their IT department in Hartford. While I was there, the government in West Springfield changed their form of government. After 5 years in the Finance Committee, I had a crazy thought of running for mayor. So for 11 years, I was the first mayor of West Springfield. I loved the government work. I loved working with people. I did not like running for office every 2 years. So I decided not to run anymore and got into the town administration end of things. I spent about 4.5 years in Beckett, and I've been here about 2.5 years now.
He's stressful 2.5 years of his whole career, he tells us, right?
That's right.
Right. Can I just add, I didn't know, I have a doctorate and 2 master's degrees, and opened my own business in Holyoke to get students to work, and I ran a school to work program for the students. So I have a lot of, the Chamber of Commerce would not talk to me unless I owned my own business. It got very interesting.
That's interesting. Yeah, Ed and I were kidding a couple weeks ago about we both got our masters at Western New England, and when they went from a college to a university, we got a letter in the mail asking us if we wanted to upgrade our diploma for $40 to university. We both said no. We went to the college. That's fine with us. Thank you. Okay, so next what we have to do is we actually have to elect officers, a chair, a vice chair, and a clerk. So I guess before we do that, hopefully, I know, Tom, when does your term end? Is it, was it this year, next year?
No, it was this year.
This year. So you're still on it until the next election. So what we're hoping for is you folks are going to enjoy this so much in the next couple of months that you're going to want to get back on the ballot in September and continue onward. It's kind of a, hopefully we're going to hold a carrot out and you'll get some enjoyment out of this and helping the town. So with that in mind, is there anybody who is interested, at least for the time being, chairing this so we have an official chair? Ed and I can't be any of the officers, so of the 5 of you, it has to be.
What's the responsibility of the chair?
Well, right now, you see the agenda that went out. The chair sets up the agenda, and the agenda is pretty much the same every meeting. So you'd be the liaison with the select board. For instance, I'm the liaison from the select board. So if we had any issues, you and I would get together and talk about them, or you could talk to Ed or the other folks. And you'd be the lead in setting up the agenda. Most of the work comes when it's budget time, and the select board and the finance committee have regular meetings to review the requests from the departments, look at the revenue coming in, and try to decide. The revenue is always less than the departments want, of course. We have to go through and usually bring in the departments, discuss with them where they're coming from, why they want increases, and I don't know if the word negotiate is proper, but try to bring the revenue and the budget requests together, because when you go to an annual town meeting, legally you have to have a balanced budget. And sometimes that's hard to do. This year it's been very, very hard to do. So you'd be in the lead, setting the meetings up and running the meetings and putting the agenda together.
Anybody else want it? I'm just
Everybody step back.
secretary. All right, I'll be
Going once, going twice. Sold.
all right, I'll be the chair.
Thank you, Barbara. And by the way,
I'll have to call you, John, to really get it clear what I have to do.
I'll give you my cell phone. I made an assumption. Everybody's okay with first names, I assume. If not, then.
Yes, please.
Absolutely.
Now, vice chair.
Well, do it officially, John. Somebody's going to have to make a motion to make her the chair.
Motion to elect Barbara as the chair of the finance committee.
Make a motion to elect Barbara chair of the Finance Committee.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So 5-0. Okay, thanks, Ed. Vice chair. Anybody interested in that? You have them all muted, Ed?
What's that?
You have them all muted? I'm not hearing anything.
No. Yeah, no.
Barbara, who would you like as your vice chair?
Oh, that's not fair. You're all great as far as I'm concerned. So please, someone volunteer.
John, how long will the volunteer be?
Well, actually, until the next election, and then once there's an election, you look at who's chair and all the positions, and sometimes they stay that way, sometimes they change depending on the group.
My only concern is that my wife and I currently have our house up for sale and we're looking to be moving. So I'd love to volunteer. I just don't know how long I could actually put in. So maybe it's just not worth my time. But if we can't get anyone, I'd be more than happy to jump in.
Barbara, I'd be happy to work with you.
Who just said that? Adam?
Ray.
Thank you.
We have a motion for Ray to be the vice chair.
Oh, was that him?
What's right?
Okay.
Are you reading?
That's Adam making the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Barbara, okay, I just have to record this. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, 5-0, thank you. Now the clerk. This is the person that takes the minutes of the meeting and gets it back to the group once they're done for distribution and review. So somebody's going to be doing some work. So you're not the first two positions that are doing the work. It's actually the clerk here.
Work on meeting. Take a walk.
Okay, we're down to Adam, Tom, and Ken. Does anybody, and this could be something, honestly, that you can rotate the minute taking on a meeting by meeting basis. That's been done in the past too. And when I'm there, I'll be glad to help. But we just need to have somebody official on as the clerk.
I'll put my hand up for the clerk there, John.
Okay, thanks, Adam. So, can we get a motion? Oops. Hold on here, I just was writing and I hit my keyboard. Motion, elect Adam as the clerk.
So moved.
That was Ken.
Second.
Barbara, okay. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, thanks. That's out of the way. So normally we have on here a public comment, and the only other person that's here, not in the committee, is Matt Rowland, who, if you know Matt, he's on the select board also. So Matt, are you tuned in to have a public comment or want to say anything, or?
Nope, I'm good, John. I'm all good. Thanks for offering. Just listening in.
Thanks for listening. Yeah. So normally we review department requests. If there's any requests, usually there's a reserve fund that we have money in, and the reserve fund is strictly for the finance committee. At one time, we had $50,000 in the reserve fund. So departments that needed something that they didn't have in their budget would fill out a reserve request, send it to the finance committee. It would be discussed at the finance committee, and if the finance committee felt it was worthy, if you will, of using some of the reserve fund, they would vote on it and fund it. As of right now, there is no money in the reserve fund going into fiscal 21 because we had to cut budgets in order to balance it going into the annual town meeting. So if the reserve fund gets replenished when we relook at the budget, then that would be at the purview of the finance committee to disperse it as they saw fit. Nobody else could get into that fund. Strictly.
John, I had a question about that. I looked at a budget from last year that was sent to me, and it if I remember the numbers correctly, there was $25 million of expenses and $27 million of revenue. Does that sound? No?
Our budget's around 17 million now.
Okay. So there was nothing left over from last year?
Well, there was some free cash. Ed, do you remember how much free cash there was?
Well, depending on how you're referring to last year, last year right now is fiscal year 20, which ended June 30th, and free cash has not been certified as of yet.
What is that, October?
Usually probably more like November, once the books are closed, and then the Department of Revenue has to certify our free cash, and they also certify the retained earnings for both the transfer station enterprise fund and the water department enterprise fund. The free cash from fiscal year 19 carried into 20. And I think it was somewhere around, I don't know, 404,000 or something like, or right around $400,000. And then of that, don't forget, by select board policy, basically a minimum of 75% of that is ruled by formula. Let's see, I think it's, I'm going to mess it up. 35 operating, 35% goes into the operating stabilization. I think it's 25% into the capital stabilization, and then 10%. I think it's 10% or whatever. Or, yeah, it goes into the OPEB account for the unfunded liability, and then that leaves 25% that can be utilized and appropriated elsewhere.
Prior to a few years ago, the free cash was just used to fund the next year's budget, and our audit report said that we shouldn't be using that money to fund the budget line. So the select board voted that every year we're going to put those percentages away of the free cash that became available, and that small 25% that was left over would roll back into the budget, because we didn't have any operational stabilization fund, which is for operational needs, or capital stabilization fund, which is for our capital stabilization needs, because we have a capital committee that, and Matt's on that, Matt Rowland's on that brings forward items that are capital that the departments have submitted on a 5-year budget, and they're the ones that approve, which come forward for the articles and hopefully get funded out of the capital stabilization at the town meetings. And OPEB is a tax, give me that exact description again, and I always lose the exact wording on that.
Oh my God, thanks, John.
The treasurer collector was the one that established it a few years ago.
Other post benefits.
Since you wanted to get up there.
Other post employee benefits?
Yeah.
It's for retirement fees. And we never had that set up properly, and we're kind of in a catch-up mode over the last few years.
So how does the reserve fund get any funding?
The reserve fund gets funding through the regular budget process. When we look at the budget for the year, reserve fund is a line in the budget, and depending on what type of year it is, we try to fund it. When I was first on the finance committee, I think I was on there for 10 years, we had $5,000, then we got it up a little higher. And at one time, because we had a pretty flush, it's hard to remember those days, we put 50,000 in. We never spent that amount, but it was there for emergency requirements of departments. So, and at the end of the year, obviously, if there's money left over in these funds, they just go back into the budget. Other department requests, it could be that they're looking at hiring somebody or changing a job description, a PCF, a PRF, posting of a job. Those went through the finance committee for review to see if they found any issues with it. Now, Ed, correct me if I'm wrong, but we don't do that step anymore?
For the PCFs, which are personal change forms, which are for hiring, change of hours, change of wages, what have you, no, it's those are just approved by the PPPB board, and the town accountant. And then for the PRFs, which are really for postings for hirings, that still falls through the 4-step process. It's required to be approved by the PPPB board, then the finance, then the select board.
And to be honest, on those PRFs for postings, the PQB, is everybody familiar with PQB, Personnel Policy and Procedures Board? We call it the PQB only because we're sick of saying Personnel Policy and Procedures Board all the time. So if you hear an acronym that you're not familiar with, just, let us know, we'll go through it. So they do all the scoring on the job descriptions, do the job descriptions. Town accountant looks to make sure there's money in the budget to have that position put out there to hire. And the finance committee really, they just review what PQB did before it goes to the town accountant. So in my mind, there's no real need for the finance committee to do that either. And that may be something the finance committee takes up and decides that they don't want to see anymore.
What are our responsibilities? The budget, I was in on a few of those select board meetings that they listened in on. It sounds like you guys hammered out a budget, approved, looked at some articles. Where do we run with the ball? What are our responsibles now before they have the ATM? And at the ATM, what are our responsibilities at that meeting?
Well, the ATM is the final culmination of the whole process where it's voted on the budget. Supposedly around January is where the budget process starts, is where the departments are asked what their needs are for the next fiscal year, which starts July 1 of every year, and they put their requests together. In the past, it's where the department sent them to the Ed, with being a town administrator, it changed a little bit over a couple of years, but basically the process was for the departments to send them forward, town administrator, town accountant, and the finance committee work together, reviewing their requests, bringing in the departments to have them actually present their budget, why they needed, say, more than last year, and if there was any increases or if there was decreases too. I personally like a zero-based budget. I like doing that in my prior career, you asked, because there's things every year that you may need this year, but you don't need next year, or things change. So if you're just tacking on year after year after year, in my opinion, that's not a realistic view, because you could be getting funded for something next year that you don't really have anymore. Or you could want funding specifically for 1 year that may be $50,000, and unless you're specific on why you need that, it's not going to pass the process. I guess my question is, what do you need us for the 2021 budget that you guys have been working on? Well, the 2021 budget is, just to be honest with you, just want to review it with you, see if you have any thoughts on it, because right now it's set up to go to the annual town meeting on August 15th. Is everybody aware of August town meeting? Annual town meeting August 15th. It's going to be advertised out there in the next couple of days. There's
at Labrie Field. Yeah, I got all that from the moderator.
Yeah. Starts at 9 o'clock, and it's going to be out in the open because of the COVID-19 virus. And there is a ad hoc planning committee, which Ed and I are both on. We got the fire chief, the police chief.
Do we have a responsibility at the meeting? Does Barbara? Do I have to show up? What do we do?
Well, at a normal annual town meeting, and this isn't normal, all right? So normally what happens is there is a table set up at the front of the audience, kind of facing the moderator in the audience, that has the select board members on with a microphone, and it has the finance committee members with a microphone and the town accountant. As the moderator will clearly say during the beginning of that meeting, we're not there as public officials, we're there as residents because it's the moderator's meeting and he holds a tight meeting. But what we do as a select board is we introduce the articles, and normally what happens is the finance committee has already reviewed all of these articles, which we can do tonight, and kind of saying, yes, we approve them, we put our stamp of approval on them, or no, we do not agree these should be approved. And at the annual town meeting, if you want to get up and say why you want to approve them and back them, or why you don't want to approve them and back them. And there's been many town meetings where the select board says, yes, we back that, and the finance committee says, no, we don't. And it's depending on how you look at it, because finances are the finance committee's purview. So there's a lot of items that they don't necessarily want to approve because it's going to take away from other departments. So, but normally what we try to do is get in sync with the finance committee. 9 out of 10.
I don't want to dominate all the questions. If anybody else got a question, pipe in. But I wanted to know what the relationship was between the budget that you guys worked on and balanced, I guess, and the articles. Are the articles part of the budget? Are they separate from the budget? How do the articles work? I'm looking at the articles right now, but are they a separate issue from the budget?
Yeah, well, the budget is one article on the warrant,
Right.
town warrant.
Okay.
So you'll see that in there. And the other ones are individual ones that were presented to the select board over the time frame that we give for folks to, is that a cat there, right?
My Maine Coon, one of my Maine Coons.
And one thing you're seeing in an unusual warrant, everything in there is a financial item. What goes to town meeting in that warrant is anything that actually needs approval of town meeting. And under normal conditions, without COVID-19, you would probably see items in there that, such as new bylaws, bylaw amendments, could be things from the planning board for zone changes or changes to their zoning bylaws that require town meeting approval. So in a normal world, it wouldn't just be all financial items, but it does include anything that does need approval of the legislative body of the town, which is, in this case, is the open town meeting.
As probably you saw last night on the select board, we didn't all agree on what articles should be advanced to the annual town meeting. One of the issues is that obviously it's COVID-19 and you've got to socially distance all these people. And it's going to be outside Saturday morning, 9 o'clock. Hopefully it's not too hot. But a normal town meeting could go 3-4 hours or extend into the next day if the moderator so chooses. So we only wanted items on this annual town meeting that we really need to get pushed through right now. Once we find out what the budget is going to be, and that'll be in a couple of months, we'll have a special town meeting, and we're projecting maybe October, which with COVID-19 will probably still be outside, but being much cooler, we'll have a lot more articles on it. And that's where this finance committee would be much more involved than this town meeting right now, because we haven't had a full finance committee this past several months. So you're normally involved going over the articles at the finance committee. That's one thing we would put on the finance committee agenda. Review all of them, determine whether the finance committee wanted to support them or not support them, and give the reasons why, and discuss that with the select board. And if the select board and the finance committee came to agreement and we both agreed to support or not support it, what happens is at the annual town meeting, there's a handout that has the article, and it says on there, supported by finance committee or not supported by finance committee. So everybody there knows that, and that's when somebody from the finance committee gets up and discusses why they support it or why they don't support it. So you're heavily involved with the articles from that point of view and from the budget from the beginning. This year has just been a very
Right. Barbara had a question.
Yeah, is this a meeting take place rain or shine? Or we have a rain date?
We have a rain date of the next weekend, the 22nd, Ed, is that it?
Yes.
Tammy Walunas in town, she's on the committee, and she is helping to get out the word advertising on the social medias. Ed's going to do Code Red. We're going to do the Gazette. The moderator is going to do the moderator page. We're gonna have it posted on the Lions board out front and then the Women's Club and getting it out in the next few days so people are aware of it. So we're expecting over 100 people to show up. We have a quorum right now that we have to have 50 or more. And we're going to have a public hearing at next Tuesday's select board meeting at 7:05 to see if we want to take the quorum from 50 and put it to a lower number. And public input is encouraged at that meeting because we feel that if you get 50 people that show up to start the meeting, once it goes under 50, you can't vote on any more articles after that, so you're kind of stuck. So under special legislation now, because of COVID, we can lower the quorum by going through this process.
So what did you want to get done tonight? You want to go through these articles?
Well, I would like to go through the articles. Ed sent you the budget. See if you have any comments on that. I mean, to be honest with you, the budget is probably not going to be changed any because we balance it. Unless you see some oddity in there, it'll probably go forward just like it is. But on the town meeting floor, the finance committee is welcome to, approve or give their support or not support by going up to the microphone and explaining why. I don't know that if you want to do that or not, but that's up to the committee. But I'd just like to get everybody up to date on the articles and the process that the finance committee uses.
All right. Should we get into the articles now? Does anybody have any other questions?
I'm going to switch my iPad here. You just sent those out to us, Ed, right?
Yes.
I was just looking at Robert Floyd's email. I don't know if it's the same thing, but the Article 1 was unpaid bills?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Does everybody have the articles up?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm gonna try to do this, Jen.
Okay, you can try to share your screen?
Yeah. Let's see if we can do it.
And while he's doing that, Article 1 is just a housekeeping issue where bills from previous fiscal years, you need to go to a town meeting and get a vote on those because they're from a different fiscal year. You can't spend money this fiscal year on bills from prior fiscal years. This is done every year. Sometimes the bill comes in late after the year end is closed, or there's some error. The town accountant brings these up. And I'm going to go to Article 2 just while he's trying to do that. Article 2 is the operating budget. So if he's able, okay. You going to scroll there, Ed?
Yeah.
So Article 2 is the operating budget. I'd like to go through all the articles and we can come back to the budget because obviously that's a biggie if you don't mind.
Okay.
So if you go to articles.
You're also going to want to see if they want to recommend, not recommend, or have no recommendation on each article.
Okay. So let's start with Article 3. This first one's just a housekeeping. Now, so here's the question. It says whether you want to, as a finance committee, support an article or not. I don't know if you're going to have enough information to do that as a committee, but as we go through, ask questions, and again, I'm a liaison, so you folks make a decision by a motion and a second and a vote. So let's just go through it. Enterprise fiscal 21. This is just a normal yearly transfer, correct, Ed, if I'm reading it, remembering it right?
Well, it's not really a transfer. Yeah, well.
Well, transfer station.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's a transfer station. So, and the Articles 3 and 4 are enterprise funds, which means they're designed to be self-sustaining, that the revenues that come in are supposed to theoretically cover all the costs, whether it's wages, operating expenses, overhead, or what have you.
Yeah, and when you go to the transfer station, you pay for those bags or you pay for trash you dump in the container, that money stays with the transfer station enterprise, pays the people that are there. And sometimes the people that are working there also work for the highway department, but their wages are split out into the transfer station enterprise funds for the hours they spend there. So that's how they control it. It's revenue and expense should be equal.
It doesn't look like that's the case here, though, right? Because you're taking money from the general fund and you're taking some, I don't know, enterprise revenues, whatever that is. So it looks like you have 175,000 in transfer fees revenue and 200,000 as the budget. Is that correct?
Right.
Okay. So it doesn't pay for itself entirely, but
no, it's supposed to, but sometimes it doesn't. And there's some that from retained earnings, you got to 6, 7, 8, 5.
Ed, do you know what the budget was for last year?
It was almost the same. My memory is, I think it was like $209,000.
That was the budget, or that was actual expenditures? Revenue.
That was what would have been approved for the enterprise fiscal fund. So it would have been it would have been the same. And hold on, I can probably go pull it out. In fact, I know I can. So you guys keep talking about it, and I'll go get last year's.
Does this include any raises for those folks?
They are. These folks are in the. Let me think. Are in the union. So if there's raises in the contract, it would include it. And I know there are raises in the contracts for the highway, police, and dispatch, because I was involved with the negotiation early this year, late last year, with that.
So, pardon my ignorance, the employees are members of the union?
The highway department, yeah, they're members of the union. And if these people are members, so I'd have to ask Randall, because there is a young gentleman at the transfer station and also another gentleman, I thought he's not young, that work there. And I don't remember if they're in the union or not, or if they're just paid out of the regular transfer station. I don't get down to that level with his staff.
Right.
So if they're not part of the highway union, raises wouldn't go into it.
I guess I'm a little...
The raises wouldn't go into it as part of the bargaining agreement. They would go in and negotiate it with Randall.
Right.
I'm just a little concerned about passing judgment on these numbers when I don't have any feel for what we did the previous year.
That's why I asked the question.
Yeah.
It changes a little bit because depending on what's going on with the budget and if we have to trim the budget, let's say for the highway department, Randall may close one day a week for a period of time. It's Wednesday and Saturday now. I think at times he closes down on Wednesday because of budget issues to save some money. So at the department level, he manages the amount of money that he's given. And we don't necessarily see that on a day-to-day. He'll announce to us what he's doing, and we'll approve it, but we don't follow it on a day-to-day. And in the winter, we have all the monies in the winter, depending if it's a good year or not. All the plowing and sanding and maintenance of the roads in the nice weather. So he moves money around quite a bit in his budget because of depending on what's going on. If we have a storm and trees fall, he has to send his folks out there to cut the tree down. He has to, if that's overtime, he has to blend that into his budget and get it somewhere else. Although winter roads and winter expenses, legally we can overspend that every year and account for it at the end of the year, as long as the budget for winter roads and winter expenses is not cut from the prior fiscal year. So if we had, making up a number, $200,000 for winter roads last year, and this year we put in there $175,000, they can't overspend that account legally because we decreased it under 200. So the thought behind that is if you're going to decrease it, we're not going to allow you to overspend it legally. So we always have to keep it at that amount or a dollar higher, which we have done, because sometimes we overspend it. We have to account for it in the end of the year reconciliation, because again, if you get 10 bad storms and you didn't plan on them on 10, you only planned on 8, you know, you got to take care of the roads. So.
Right, but this particular article is only for the transfer station, right? Isn't
Yeah,
it?
no, I was just
Highway. Okay, great.
talking about Randall and the highway department and
Yeah.
how he manages it, yeah.
And I guess that question that I asked was not intended to be specifically for Article 3. I would say that, you know, my concern about previous years' operations should be available for us to be, you know, pass judgment, or at least for me anyways, to pass judgment on these respective articles.
Sorry, during the budget process, you see the prior year's information. Matter of fact, during the budget process, one of the items that's reviewed every meeting, say every meeting, at least once a month, depending if you have a once a month meeting or twice a month, we get the up-to-date revenues and the up-to-date expenses from the town accountant. And that finance committee goes over that at every meeting to look at if you're 3 months into it, you know, you're 25% into the budget and the revenues. So we look at that in the finance committee to see where the budget is trending, if there's any areas that may be trending so far off that they'll never catch up by the end of the year, and then have a discussion with the department as to why, say, they're overspending a particular line item. Because it used to be years and years ago, nobody really cared about that. It was just the end of the year, which made no sense, because if you catch it at the end of the year, it's way too late. So finance committee reviews it on a month-to-month basis, like the select board does. And the last 2 years, we've been really holding their feet to the fire, and they've done a great job on the departments. If you look at it month to month, they're pretty much right on there. There's some items that you have to prepay, like service agreements and maintenance agreements and software and all that stuff. But when you ask them why there was a blip in that particular line, they can show you the reason why. And then over the course of the next few months, you'll see it trend out evenly. So that's an important part for the finance committee to review those revenue and expense statements on a regular basis.
And I'm back with that information from last year. So last year, the transfer station enterprise fiscal year 2020 budget would have consisted of wages of $36,168, operating expenses of $123,620, environmental compliance of $9,150, indirect costs of $18,163, and debt services of $21,000 for a total of $208,101.
So last year, Ed, was anything transferred from the general fund?
Every year something's transferred to the general fund. Basically that indirect cost, that 18,163 you see both up above and in the piece down below, that is the cost that is absorbed by, in this case, the transfer station for an agreed upon cost that is supplemented to like the town accountant for her time, the collector treasurer's office for their time, and items like that. So they also supplement our general fund budget by doing that.
Why would environmental compliance get cut in half? I mean, that doesn't make sense to me.
Well, this is an unusual year. You got a few things happening, Ray. Number one is you're seeing the debt services disappear because we've paid off our capping, borrowing that we did to cap that landfill. And that is one of the reasons that environmental compliance piece is dropping. However, on the flip side of that, you're seeing a good increase in the operating expenses. However, that is due, and I don't know if any of you have been following what's going in the world of recycling, but for municipalities especially, it's can be a little bit crippling, where we used to benefit from either getting paid for our tonnage of, paper or cardboard that went through the transfer station and was recycled, or glass bottles, or metal, or what have you. Now the flip side is come around, and we're not only not receiving payment for that or breaking even with no cost, we're actually having to pay to have those recycled items taken away.
I wanted to ask you about that. So there's no revenue from recycled items other than
Not
aluminum,
anymore.
other than aluminum cans, but we give that away to scholarships, right?
Well, if they have a deposit on them.
Yeah, right.
Otherwise,
Yeah, the only aluminum and aluminum cans are the tabs.
Yeah. So what do we need? What do we need? A motion to approve Article 3 or what?
It wouldn't be approve. It would be either recommend, not recommend, or not have a recommendation.
yeah. Sometimes what happens is the finance committee doesn't vote because it really isn't a finance issue, and they really aren't interested in putting their stamp on it because it doesn't involve finances. So they just don't say anything. They just pass it saying it's not within their purview.
Well, I don't know what that means. Is this within our purview?
Oh, this would be supporting it. Sure, it's a financial article.
Okay. So, are there any other discussion about it?
Well, I guess in short, the number for this upcoming fiscal year is less than what it was last year. So,
Yeah.
I mean, everything else being equal, that's why not?
Is that a recommendation, Ken?
Sure.
All right. I'll second that, I guess. All right, let's move on.
Wait, before you do that, Ed, are you taking this down?
As far as the recommendations, yes, I am taking it down because I will have to put that into my next version of the warrant, which has both the summaries, the motions, and the finance recommendations.
Do we need to take note of who made the motion in the second?
You do for that because you're taking the minutes. All I'm concentrating on is whether it's recommended or not.
Okay, so hold on, let me.
So Ken recommended it, and I seconded his recommendation.
So Article 3, you said Ken and Ray?
Yep.
And
Right.
it's 5-0, all in favor of that, you said?
All right.
Yes.
I
All right.
Gotcha. Okay. 4, water enterprise, pretty much the same situation. Ed, do you want to do a quick on that, or?
Sure. And basically, you've got wages here for $203,376, operating expenses of $163,732, capital outlay of $133,900, indirect costs of $93,946, and debt services of $218,085 for a total of $813,039. Of that, $675,526 is raised from the water enterprise revenues. $43,567 is coming from their retained earnings account, which means they have been profitable over the years. And then the $93,946 in indirect costs is showing as coming from the general fund because they are supporting our general fund by paying a portion of the town accountant, the collector treasurer's office wages for the processing and the bills and what have you, and some other agreed upon items that are in those offices and indirect services. Now, correspondingly, last year, very similar. Wages were $210,356. Operating expenses were $168,893. Capital outlay was $130,000. Indirect costs were the $93,946, and the debt services were $214,000 for a total of $817,195. And of that, last year, $693,060 was raised from the water enterprise revenues. $30,189 came from the retained earnings, and the $93,946, which corresponds to those indirect costs, was appropriated to be charged from the general fund to the general fund for indirect costs.
And the water commissioners are pretty independent. They don't fall under as a department like other departments. They have their own budgets, their own revenue and expense that have to equal. So an indirect cost, for instance, if we said, we have a hard year, we want you to contribute an extra $20,000, they can do that, but that'll go into your water bill. And so your water bill will go up. So whatever money they spend, they need is coming out of the water bills that we all receive. And they've kept it at a good rate for a long time. I think it's about $58 now or something. So it is a direct, cause and effect. If we take more money from them, they take more money from the customers.
Who are they? Who is the Water Enterprise Fund?
The water commissioners, was it Jim Walunas? And who else?
These are Southampton folks?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, they're elected positions.
An elected board.
Okay. I've got a well, but where does our water come from?
Mine comes from the faucet, right? That's all I know. I turned the darn thing on. No, it comes from the reservoir that we have. And we also,
Money goes to manage the reservoir, so to speak, and allocate water resources.
well, the infrastructure, the meters and all that. We have a connection with Easthampton. We're just building a new pumping station down there, Big Y, interconnect station.
Yeah, and actually our town well, which
That's what
for most of the year, most of our water is drawn from, is probably maybe a mile down from the town hall on College Highway towards the Big Y, and it's on the same side of the street. Sits down a little hollow.
Right. With all due respect, I'd move Article 4.
I can't see everybody with the screen share, so you got to give me your name.
Ken.
Okay.
And Tom seconded the recommendation to approve.
Now, Barbara, as a chair, you should be calling the vote and everything, if you don't mind. She's still there. Let me swap screens.
John, I don't see her on here anymore.
I don't either.
I'm the
Hang on.
vice chair. All those approved?
Waiting to get back in.
I'm the vice chair. All those approved?
Aye.
Aye.
Yes. All right.
Yeah, I'm in. Thank you, dear. Bye-bye. I got disconnected, you guys. I'm really sorry.
That's okay. Those things happen.
Okay.
We managed. All right. Article what? What's the next one?
5.
So if I get disconnected, I will just do it again. This machine cuts out every so often. Okay?
Okay.
Well, I'm gonna try. When I did the screen share, I lost the participant listing, so I didn't see you disappear or sit there in the waiting room. So I just brought it up over my warrant document. So I'll try to keep an eye on it.
Thank you very much. Sorry for the inconvenience.
There's no inconvenience at all.
You go to Article 5 yet? Okay, so this was one brought up by the Capital Committee. They approved it to bring up at the annual town meeting, and they want to take roughly $20,600 from the Capital Stabilization Fund. That's where we talked about that in the beginning, where the free cash, we allocate a percentage into that. Right now in the Capital Stabilization, before any of these transfers, I believe there's around $404,000.
So there's no,
that?
there's no appropriation here. It's just a transfer.
Well, it's got to go to town meeting and get voted on. Now, Ed, what's the percentage that come out of the stabilization accounts? Is it 2/3?
I got her back in, so thank you. You're welcome.
That's good. It's got to go to the town meeting and it's got to be voted on, and it's not a normal majority. Ed, on the stabilization funds, what's the vote split? Is it a 2/3 or?
It is a 2/3 to take it out. To put money into a stabilization fund, it's a majority vote, but to take it out, it's a 2/3 vote requirement.
Okay. And on this, as our understanding is that right now they don't have a PA system that works to communicate throughout the Noaa school. They have to use the individual phones that are in the classroom to contact people, and some of those are outside lines. So it's disruptive. So it's considered a safety issue at Norris because they have no way to mass alert everybody.
Yep.
And that's why we put it forward.
Can we just pass that one along then?
Yep. So moved.
Yep.
Made the motion?
Ken?
I approve. I second.
Second? You second?
Adam?
Just writing, so if you can just say your name out there.
Sure.
So Barbara, can you take the vote on this?
Yes, what do I do?
This, you've got a motion, you got a second, just ask if there's any discussion. If not, just
Any
take a vote.
discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Oh, yeah, it's actually a roll call vote, so.
Oh, all right, roll call, I'll say, gentlemen, go.
Ken?
Right, Raymond?
True.
John? Adam?
I don't vote.
Adam's an
Adam?
aye. Adam is an aye, Barbara.
Thank you. Ken?
Aye.
And myself, aye. Did I get everyone?
Thompson, aye.
Oh, we're,
Yeah. Because of these Zoom meetings, we use a roll call vote.
Yeah, it's a requirement from the legislation that allowed us to, or the governor's order that allowed us to do this.
So Article 6, gutter repair and sealing at Norris School. Again, it's recommended by the Capital Committee to come out of capital stabilization. They have numerous leaks around the building from the roof, and the gutters are leaky, and the way the system is set up, gets behind the gutter and goes in, sits on top of windowsills and leaks through the windows into the classrooms. So it's been a problem for quite a while, and the new custodian there, Tom Lavelli, has did a lot of research on this and brought vendors in to find out what the issues were, and this is a culmination of that. We want to get that done before winter, because once winter comes and there's freezing and thawing again, it gets into the classrooms and ruins the ceilings and the walls.
so I asked for,
Yeah, just ask for a motion.
a motion,
So moved. This is Ken.
and who would like to second?
Adam seconds it.
Okay, all right, so now we'll take a roll call.
Well, any discussion?
Oh, any discussion? I gotta write this down.
I've got a question on the 25,000. That comes from what? Do we get a series of quotes on that, or one quote, or how does that work as far as that number?
That would be an estimate, and then what they will have to do is they will have to follow mass procurement laws when they actually go to have the work done. So anything below $10,000, they can just go ahead and do it as best business practices. On anything between $10,000 and $50,000, they will have to get a minimum of 3 quotes for the work. And then if it's $50,000 or above, they actually have to go out and get sealed bids for the work.
So do we feel that this 25,000 will get the job done, or would it be more than 25,000?
Yeah,
No.
it was presented to the Capital Committee, and they did a lot of research. Matt Rowland, who's the select board rep on the committee, did a very thorough investigation and a presentation to us at the board meeting. And they feel comfortable that this will be enough to do all the work. They're not replacing, it's all repair work.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so anyone else for discussion? Okay, all in favor? No, we can't do that, right?
Yeah, you can do that, yeah.
Roll call vote.
Roll call vote, please. All right,
Adams and I.
fine.
Tom's a yes.
Raise yes.
And I'm a yes.
Ken's and I.
Yeah, Barbara, just for you, what you do is just call for a roll call vote, and the people just say, you know, Ray, Ken,
Name and
all
aye
this.
or nay.
Yeah, that's all.
Okay. All right. Once I know what I'm doing, I'll do it better.
No problem at all. We appreciate you doing it. So Article 7, funding for replacement kitchen oven and hood fire suppression system at Noaa School. We bundle those two together because they're literally side by side. The oven is a big double oven. It's used for all the cooking in the cafeteria in the whole school. And that has met its useful life. I think it's well over 20 years old, originally, I believe, to the school. And the hood fire suppression system has closed down the range right now because it doesn't meet the fire codes, so they can't use the range. So this is the fire suppression system over the range, and then the double oven next to it. So we combine those together because it just made sense to make the vote go easier.
Right.
Ken, I have a question. What is the, just out of curiosity, what's the balance in the capital stabilization fund?
Capital was, I believe, $404,000 before any of these articles.
Okay, thank you.
I think that might have been operating. In fact, I know that was operating. Let me go take a look.
You think that was,
I've got that in my office.
you think that was operating it?
I think the 404 was operating, yeah.
Okay, so let's check it then. And the thing about the operating and well, more the operating is that when we find out the true numbers for the budget, that is going to be a source of funds that we have to look to if we need more funding, which the select board thinks we do, because what we did is we did the budget based on a 1% decrease to Chapter 70, and I believe a 3% decrease to general funds. And depending on who you talk to in the political ring, is that they could say it could be up to 20% decrease. And we think they're just throwing that large number out, so when they give us a number, it's going to look better than that. But there's going to be more cuts coming along the way. And, you know, there's only three ways to do that. You can use the operational stabilization, you can do a chapter or a 2.5 override, or you can cut the budgets where they are right now and you bring it down to that number. So depending on what number we have to bring it down to, we got to look at all those options.
Right.
So we don't want to overspend the operational stabilization.
Right.
That stove has been down for a couple of years because I know with the Lions Club, we used to cook there for our spring breakfast.
Yeah.
So this has been an ongoing thing for a couple of years, hasn't it? A few years, maybe?
Yeah, and sometimes these things get put off because there's just not money available, you know. And when it comes to the kids, you know, if it doesn't work properly and it can't be repaired, I forget how much money they put in the last repair, but, you know.
Well, I would make a motion to amend it.
Do you want to make a motion for Article 7?
Yes.
Somebody said,
Second, Ken.
okay, we'll do a roll call.
Adams, a yes.
Tom's a yes.
Ken's a yes.
Barbara's a yes.
Okay.
Ray?
Yes, I said, yeah, sorry.
All right, so
Okay, I can't see Ed. Let me change screens here. Is he back? Nope. Okay, so let me see if I can pull it up on my iPad and see what the next article is so we can continue Okay, the next article is Article 8, transfer for Noaa School replacement of teacher laptops. And I know, well, sorry, Matt, I can't unmute you. So Matt Rowland, again, is on the Capital Committee. But this is for funding the replacement of teacher laptops at Norris. And I forget the exact number, but they're replacing some that are not yes or no. They're about 10 years old, Matt, these laptops now. Yeah, Matt's saying they're about 10 years old. And because of COVID, updated laptops obviously are very important. And we're hoping to get some COVID-related money from the CARES Act so we can buy a lot more laptops for the kids to have at home during this schooling from home. So this is to replace, how many laptops, Matt, do you remember? 10 laptops. Thank you. 10 laptops right now. So, and this is an ongoing program that they're going to recycle all the old laptops throughout the whole school as the years go by, but they can't do it all on one because we don't have the funding. So, that answer any questions on that, or is there more questions? We want to wait till Ed comes back.
I would, again, pardon my ignorance. Norris School is the elementary school here in town?
Yes, it's the elementary school.
The only one. The only one.
The only one, yes. Yes.
Okay. Good.
And Hampshire Regional is a regional school which is 7th through 12th.
Okay.
That's shared with 4 other towns.
So I'll make a motion that we accept the Article 7. 8, excuse me.
Please, yeah.
I'll second that. Adam will second.
Let's do a roll call then.
Adams and I.
Ken's and I.
Birds and I.
Tom's a yes.
Barbara's a yes.
Okay. So the next article is to transfer for police portable radio replacements. See if the town will appropriate $18,000 from Capital Stabilization Fund to police budget to fund 12 portable radios. This is a communication issue. Right now, we have old handheld radios, and this is how they communicate with all the officers that are on the force. So they're upgrading them. A note is that this does not let them communicate directly with the fire department. They have to go through the dispatcher base station, and then the dispatcher will connect them with the fire department. This lets them connect with police departments. And when I asked them about why not upgrade them to the ones that can communicate directly with the fire department, the cost was a lot more per radio. So the chief said he needs new radios, and he's satisfied with the ability to communicate with fire through the dispatch. So he's not looking for the moon here. He's just looking for some good quality day-to-day radios to replace the old ones that he has.
I would move it.
Second. I second the motion. All in favor? No, roll call.
Adams and I.
Ken's and I.
Tom's a yes.
Ray?
Birds and
Barbara's a yes.
Okay, Article 10, it's funding for an SUV cruiser for the police department. Appropriate $56,512 to purchase a new SUV police cruiser for the police. It says SUV because the old Crown Vics are no longer made, and the old Chevy Impalas are no longer made. So they're SUVs, or the Ford Explorer style. We have one SUV that we bought about a year or so ago, which has about 30,000 miles on it. We have another new one that is coming in, hopefully by the end. Well, I guess October, if memory is right. What had happened last year is we had an accident where one of our police officers got hit by another vehicle. So the one that we're waiting to come in is the one that is being replaced with the insurance money. This one is to be a third vehicle. And all the vehicles they have besides that one with 30,000 miles have well over 100,000 miles. They're the old Crown Victorias, the ones that we're all used to seeing on the streets, and those haven't been made for years. And the thing about police vehicles is 130,000 miles on a police vehicle isn't as important as how many hours those things run, because as you know, they sit there idling for a great amount of time. So 130,000 miles is a lot of miles, but it doesn't indicate even the wear and tear that's on those. So the chief tries to replace these on a regular basis. So this will give him 3 vehicles that have 30,000 miles or less on them. So he won't be needing another one for a little bit, hopefully. What the chief does for his car is he takes the worst Crown Vic, and they also have a Crown Vic, I believe, for the lieutenant that goes to court when needed. So they keep 2 of the older ones just for that. They're not used in pursuit or anything like that.
Okay, so you kind of answered my question. I wondered why, since they just recently bought one, they needed another one that quickly. So I understand what you said.
Okay.
The only problem with that, though, is if they get them back to back like that, what's happening for the next cycle period?
Well, remember the one they got with 30,000 miles. Remember when they got that one, Ed?
That one's now at least a year and a half, and it might be 2 years old.
Okay. So, and the one that we're getting coming in that's ordered was because of an accident. That was a fairly recent one too, I believe. So once they have this third one, the cycle will be fine after that. They won't need one probably for a couple more years, I hope.
John, this talks about issuing bonds, so this isn't coming from any sort of stabilization fund. So how is that in the budget somewhere, or is this going to be a surcharge on the property taxes?
Neither.
Okay.
Because it's not in the budget yet, because the car would have to go through the cruiser would go through the procurement process, be ordered, be outfitted. We would go out and borrow when it's actually ready to be delivered. And once we go out and borrow to pay the vendor for it, the principal and the interest wouldn't be due until a year from that time frame. So the borrowing for this vehicle wouldn't show up in the 21 budget. It would show up in the fiscal year 22 budget for the first time.
Okay, but it would be a line item, and it would be part of the next year's budget?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, when we did the budget, we would have to appropriate that money in the proper line.
Right.
Okay.
There's a debt service portion of the operating budget.
Yeah.
Broken out into 2 portions, as you see before. The top portion is for the principal payments, and the bottom portion is for the interest.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. And then the capital stabilization account, before any of these items are approved or whatever, was $154,513.
Okay. Thank you.
It was the operational, that was 404?
The 404, 536, or 504, 404, 536.
Thank you, Ed.
And then free cash was at $20,205.
So Barbara, would you like to call?
Anyone want to make a motion?
I'll move it, Ken.
Somebody second?
Second, Tom.
Okay, let's do a roll call. Barbara, yes.
Tom, yes.
Pat,
Ken, yes.
You hear from everyone? Tom?
Yep, I was the second one.
Okay. Ken?
Is that for the SUV cruiser?
Yeah,
Yes.
we went through number 10.
Okay, so 8 and 9 were also recommended?
Yep.
Okay, and just so the Finance Committee knows, Article 10, this is a borrowing. Because it's a borrowing, it's a required 2/3 vote, majority vote at the annual town meeting.
Okay.
And these are the articles that sometimes get contested on the floor of the town meeting. So there could be some discussion on that. So
Who answers those questions when there's discussion when we are at the town meeting?
Well, for instance, this was submitted by the police chief, so the police chief would be there and he would answer the questions. The next one is Article 11, transfer for fire department thermal imaging cameras. Want to appropriate $8,100 from capital stabilization to fund the replacement of the imaging cameras. And remind me, Ed, do they have one down and this is for a second, or are they replacing both of them?
Yeah.
They're replacing both of them. They are the two that they have are currently antiquated. One is not working, but they're both over their useful life. So this would allow them to have the two of them in case they had to go in two different directions or they needed two on a call. But these are also newer technology, which are better, they're more efficient, and they're also much less costly than when the town would have purchased the two that we have.
Everybody's in the know. And so
So they're costing less or more?
These cost less when the ones that basically they're utilizing now, those were probably in the range of about close to $20,000 a piece when they were built.
Okay. Okay, anyone want to make a motion?
So moved. Ken?
John seconds.
All right, let's do a roll call. Barbara, yes.
Yes.
Ken, yes.
Tom, yes.
So.
Okay. Article 12, funding for HVAC upgrades at Hampshire Regional. Appropriate $55,450 for its portion, which I can explain, to purchase an upgrade to the HVAC system at Hampshire Regional and to authorize the treasurer to borrow. Excuse me, it's another borrowing article. So the $55,450 is Southampton's share of the cost of repairing the boiler at Hampshire Regional. Hampshire Regional is a 5-town group, although Southampton has roughly 55% of the students up there. So we pay a portion amount of repairs in part of the budget. If you're not familiar with how that works, is we have 55% roughly of all the students, but we only get 20% vote, if you will, based on the original way that the Hampshire Regional was set up. So if we vote no for this and the other 4 towns vote yes, we're still committed to paying it, because 4 out of 5 towns need to approve any of these shared expenditures to commit the other town to go with it. So it's been a kind of a bone of contention over the years in the school committee, Noaa School Committee, I believe, and tell me if I'm talking out of school, no pun intended, looking at that agreement to see if we could renegotiate it to what we feel would be a better proportion for us. I mean, personally, if I'm paying 55% of something, I would like 55% of the vote, because that's just how business works. But this isn't how the agreement was set up when it was done. So that's being looked into. But right now, that's our portion of the full. So I'm going to guess off the top of my head, it's roughly $100,000 repair.
Well, but my memory, it was something like a $200,000 or $250,000 repair, but they were using $100,000 of their, and I can't remember it's basically their equivalent of our free cash account to cover the first $100,000 of the repair.
I have a question. What is the HVAC?
Heating, ventilation, and air conditioning system.
Heating, ventilation. Okay.
So our percentage of the budget or whatever this is 55%, but we only have 20% of the vote.
Yeah, there's 5 towns, and each town gets an equal vote.
Equal vote. Okay.
Yeah,
But we have 55%. We have 55% of the cost.
Burden.
Right. We have 55% of the students that are there.
So we have 55% of the cost, is that right?
Is that right?
Correct.
Yeah, you're not, believe me, most people aren't happy about that. That's why it's being looked into. I mean, we looked into, in order to get out of it, per the agreement, we would have to have a town meeting and vote to get out of the agreement. And the other 4 towns would have to have a town meeting to vote to allow us to get out of the agreement. So obviously, that's probably not going to happen. The other way is going for some legislation to allow us to pull out, like Gateway did it. Was that what
Yeah, Worthington pulled out a Gateway.
Worthington pulled out. Yeah. Worthington used to be part of Williamsburg. Why are we borrowing instead of taking this out of a capitalization fund or some such thing where we have some money?
Because we don't have enough in the capital stabilization fund to fund this and the other items we're recommending.
Yeah, that'd be more than a third of the balance that's in there now.
Does anyone want to make a motion?
And again, you don't have to make a motion to approve it. You can make a motion to not approve it. And at town meeting, you can give your reason why.
Not recommend or not recommend. Not
Right,
approve.
recommend or not recommend, yeah. And give the reasons why. But again, because it's a 4 out of 5 town issue, there's not much we can do about it, right, Ed?
There's not a heck of a lot, and the flip side of this is, yes, Southampton does have 55% of the students in that building, so, the 55% of that student body is our responsibility. The heating and ventilation system isn't working correctly. That can be a health issue. It's also a building issue when the heating part isn't working correctly, and you might have pipes freeze and burst, so.
Yeah, the kids would suffer, the students would suffer, so.
Right, but the underlying principle is that the number of students per each town determines their share of the operating expenses.
Correct.
Okay, and the 4 out of 5 is just the votes of the towns for this, that, and the other thing.
Correct.
Okay, all right.
And they're going to do this even if they don't have classes this year because of COVID.
Yeah.
And because they're still trying to decide what model they're going to use. And, if they decide, for instance, bring them back in January and the HVAC system isn't operating properly.
Yes, that'd be a problem.
Right.
Right. Okay.
All right, I guess I'd move for a recommendation.
And I'll second.
No, that makes sense. Oh, no. It makes complete sense.
Okay, let's make a roll call.
So,
Barbara, yes.
Tom, yes.
Ken, yes.
conversation, I think that,
Adam, yes.
I talked to Marty here.
And this is just my opinion on voting in general. If you don't feel like you want to go with the vote, don't feel bad about being the one person that says no, Vote what you feel.
I was just going to ask that question. So what happened if somebody said no, but the majority says yes, and it goes?
It passes. I mean, on the select board, sometimes like last night we had some 3-2 votes. Okay, you know, you said your piece, you voted, and you go on to the next one, you know?
Good.
So Ed, do you want to go over this one, 13?
Sure, I'm happy to.
Thank you.
It's very varied across the church.
All right, revolving funds are established in our, and we've done it by bylaw, so these are all existing revolving funds. So what happens, and I'll just, let's see, pick on one like,
It's almost like we're the
let's say,
exclusion. Like we're
What's a
the
good-
exception to the rule. Like everybody else is fine with it.
planning board administrative expenses. So when the planning board
And I'm just not going to get into it.
takes in an application and someone pays the fees to them for that application and review for their permit, it goes into the revolving fund.
10 hours a day.
And then the planning board
So
may use the funds in that revolving fund to pay, in this case, it's authorized for administrative expenses, so any administrative expenses can be paid out of that. They can't exceed what they have in the fund, number one, so if they only had $5,000 in there, they spend $10,000. They also cannot expend any more than $10,000 1 year. It's capped. For the consultant costs, there's a portion of the fees that, or I shouldn't say, but the planning board can say that they want a third-party peer review. The applicant has to pay for that third-party peer review, go into the revolving fund, and then funds and pay that third-party peer review person. And in the case of the consultant costs, they cannot exceed $15,000 in the year. So the list that's here, all these revolving funds have been set up and are in our bylaws. However, yearly, the town meeting has to set a spending limit for the upcoming fiscal year on it. And town accountant Vicki Morrow reviews this every year. She takes a look and sees, you know, what's happened in the last couple years. You know, have the Conservation Commission for their operating expenses, administration expenses, revolving fund gotten anywhere close to that $10,000?
So I guess all I'm saying is there's a lot of.
Somebody's talking in the background. I'm
$900 or $9,500 or $9,800. It may be time to take a look for the upcoming fiscal year and saying, okay, we really need to bump this up, and the spending limit might need to be set at $12,000 or $15,000. For fiscal year 21, all the fiscal spending limits that are set here are the same as they were for fiscal 20.
Excuse me, is there somebody that has somebody in the background talking? It seems to be overriding the mic sometimes. Oh, thank you.
What? I don't see a administrative or operating expense for the finance committee.
Yeah.
What kind of administrative expense might the conservation committee have that we wouldn't have, I guess, or any of these other committees? I mean, I can see council on aging, they got a van or something, but.
Well, it could be, you know, whether it's copying expenses, whether they're having, you know, signs made for some of the conservation areas, items like that.
Or consulting, if they need a consultant brought in.
Right.
Oh, not
And this is just a maximum.
So then it appears in the spreadsheet what they actually spent the following year when it comes out.
Yeah, they account for all the spending, Ed, correct?
What's that?
They account for the spending during the year, so at the next budget cycle, we'll know how much they spent the prior year.
Correct.
That's something you folks would see on the finance committee.
Okay, I'd move recommendation.
Down seconds.
What's the recommender?
Ken?
Ken, thanks. I should know, Ken, you're winning the vote here with the.
That's good.
Do I take the vote, Barbara?
Okay. Do we have a motion, the vote?
We have a motion, we have a second.
Okay, and let's do, I say yes.
Ken, yeah.
Ray?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Ken?
Yes.
Okay. Right, so moved, I guess, that's what you say. Okay. Now we're on to Article 14.
Want to do this one, Ed?
What's that?
Want to do this one?
Oh, sure. So we have a number of community preservation articles, including what is called their report of the Community Preservation Committee, and then there are several projects that they are recommending for funding from their Community Preservation Fund. And each of you as a Southampton resident will pay a portion, a local portion into that Community Preservation Fund from your taxes. It's a 3% surcharge on your home values over $100,000 that is paid in, and then on top of that, the state also puts in a percentage of a match to the local match. But Article 14 is basically a combination of a report of the Community Preservation Committee. It authorizes their administrative expenses for the upcoming fiscal year. In this case, it would establish that at $7,500. And then what it does is it goes to estimate the revenues that will go into the historic resources, the community housing reserve, and the open space reserve. And generally, you have to put a minimum of 10% into these three accounts, and then the remaining 70% may go into what is called an undesignated account. So in this particular case, for fiscal year 21, our town accountant has estimated the revenues for the historic resources reserve at 10% to be $33,000. The estimated revenues for community housing reserve to be $33,000. And then the estimated reserves for open space, which also includes our commitment, because we actually borrowed against our local community preservation open space revenues for the next 10 years to help purchase, in addition to a grant we got from the state, the property on Pomeroy Meadow Road for basically to protect and preserve and conserve the water resource area for our well. So of that, in a normal year, it would be $33,000 like the other two, but because we're also accounting for the payment back of that loan for this upcoming year, basically this is being noted as a memo, and it also fulfills a 10% requirement for open space reserve, but it's also the commitment to pay that first year of a 10-year loan on the property.
And just, if you're not familiar with the CPA, Community Preservation Act, that's been running for quite a number of years, and Southampton was one of the first adopters to get into it at the maximum, which is 3%. So when the state doles out money every year, because we were one of the first adopters, we're in the first payout cycle. Sometimes it comes back and we get another payout. So they initially promised that if you do it at 3%, you were an early adopter, you get 3% match. Some years we get that, some we don't, but we get the maximum that any percentage that any town gets because we were an earlier adopter. And these Community Preservation Committee recommend these. The select board, we can't do anything with them because that's separate. It goes to the town meeting and the town votes on it. So this is just us passing it through the system. And Virginia Ahart, if you know her, she's the chair of it, and she'll get up and she'll represent each of these. But it's not something we can take off or put on the warrant. We don't have that authority. So you want it, so that's just the reporting, if you will, the normal reporting, Article 14. That's just the reallocation of the funds that come in.
Oh, I'm sorry, where do those funds come from, John?
The Community Preservation Act that was established, I don't know, 10 years ago. I may have the number of years wrong. It was each community was asked to set up a Community Preservation Committee and adopt the Community Preservation Act, and 3% of the tax rate could be put into the CPA account. So every year, 3% of your taxes goes into that fund. And the Community Preservation Committee manages that. There's various categories, like it says, historic reserves, community, open space, that they can allocate the money in that account for projects in town. So when we buy open space, you go to the Community Preservation Committee and ask, say, we have this 100 acres here, we really think it's good for the town, and see if they will support it. If they support it, they put out an article for spending. They control that money. We've got money in there for community housing. We haven't done anything with it yet, but we're looking at putting, I don't want to use the wrong word. I did that one time and somebody chastised me. Affordable housing. Affordable housing is the word, yes. So we have money in the Community Preservation Committee that we can use for affordable housing once we figure out how to spend it.
So this is just a transfer then? It's not any revenue that's got to be raised or debt or anything?
No, this is just what term I want to use. What?
Well, this is the estimate of the revenues that would come in for 21.
From that 3%.
Allocating those revenues to these three accounts. Or I should say a portion of those revenues to those three accounts.
It's just a bookkeeping of, this is the money we estimate we're going to get in, here's what account we're going to put it in within the CPC.
So if it's not an expense, then it's one of those things that we don't really have to vote on?
Yeah, you can support it by saying yes, but there's really nothing we can do about it either way. So if the select board says no, we don't want to do it, the finance committee said no, it really wouldn't have any effect. It goes to town meeting and town meeting votes on it. So this is more an FYI for the finance and the select board. So you don't need to take a vote on it if you don't want. You can just pass it by because it's really not in your purview, you could say.
Yeah, if that was the case, I'd just put it down as no recommendation.
Okay.
So,
I will move to make no recommendation. That's great.
Tom will second.
so no recommendation, correct?
Correct.
Now, just out of curiosity, discussion, does that send a bad message to anybody?
No, because if they asked you, it would just be, this isn't a financial article, so we didn't make a recommendation on it. And that's not abnormal.
Okay.
I mean, somebody could ask the question of, well, why didn't you have a recommendation on it? And I mean, probably the easiest way to walk through that one is you could say, well, we didn't have a recommendation on it because it doesn't have an effect on the operating budget.
Yep. Okay. That's reason enough, I would guess.
Okay, Article 15. Can you scroll a little bit, please?
Good, because that's a physical possibility. Will I, John?
Was tested one day and was negative.
My English teacher would be mad now.
That's what happens when you give me about a month's worth of 4 nights a week meeting and I'm sleep deprived.
No,
This is community preservation funding again, right? Let me just say
Yeah, I think the last couple articles are all community preservation.
they are, yeah.
Yeah,
And this
15,
is
16,
just-
17, and 18 are all CPC articles.
Yeah, and this is building a ramp, handicap accessible ramp at the First Congregational Church for the community covered food pantry, which provides, food for our local community. They've got 2 step-ups. This is a ramp that allow them to come in there as for handicapped accessible. And we have an agreement with the church that we use their parking lot for events, or we own the hill up there for sledding and all that. So we kind of have a little reciprocity agreement with the church.
And because the church is a historical landmark, it's eligible to be, projects for it, eligible to be funded from, for the CPC, that is historical preservation account.
Right. And it's not coming out of our budget.
right.
So are these again in our purview, really?
I mean, it's up to you. You can weigh in and say we recommend it. You can back up and say, we have no recommendation because it has no effect on the operating budget. That's up to you.
I mean, you could go and say, I don't want to do this because it's a church and we shouldn't be mixing, church and state funds and all that. But again, it's the Community Preservation Act funding that's coming from us, not from our direct town budget. And it does provide a service to our community with the community food pantry, and also is historical, like I said. So.
The other articles that we approved and voted approval, did any of those not affect the operating budget?
I can't remember one that didn't.
Well, I could say that the 2 enterprise funds are designed to be self-sustaining, so you could use the argument that they don't affect the operating budget. However, because of those indirect costs, it does cross over, and actually it helps out the operating budget. So
we get revenue funding from it,
yeah. So I would probably use the argument if I can't really think of, one that doesn't have that effect, any others that had that would not have effect on the operating budget.
So we're going to go with no for that.
Okay. John, you mentioned the English teacher.
Yes.
He or she would have a problem with the spelling of accessibility in the second line of the article.
Accessible ramp.
Accessibility ramp. And if you look at the second line of the narrative underneath,
Oh,
accessibility
I see what you're saying in the title.
is spelled correctly, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if you can change that now or if it's too late.
Yeah, it's too late.
Okay. Yet I mentioned it.
Too late. Yeah, that's interesting because probably 20 people looked at this and nobody else got it.
Yeah.
Oh, well, sorry.
Yeah, all right. I get to follow the sword for that. I'm the one that does these.
So I would think that for Articles 15 through 18, we would just, pass by, or no, we wouldn't have a recommendation to them.
So if you wanted to do that, you could make that motion.
I second it, Tom.
Okay.
Second it?
Adam?
Okay.
Ray's in favor.
Ken's a yes.
Tom's a yes. I wonder if we lost our chairperson.
Yeah, just wondered if Barbara's still there.
She's on mute.
Okay.
I can unmute her.
All right, so we're through 18 now, right?
And we have to go back to 2.
Yeah,
Don't
one
we?
and two. 1 and 2.
Okay.
1 and 2.
Just a question. I left the selectmen's meeting before you folks adjourned. There were 21 articles, weren't there? How come there's only 18 now?
We cut some back. And Barbara's still muted.
Let me try it again then.
Jesus.
There you go.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I don't know how that happened, but I've been out a long time. Maybe I talked too much.
Anything we don't know, we're just blaming it, Barbara, so don't worry.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly.
Okay.
There were 3 articles that the select board recommended that be delayed till a fall town meeting because one of the pieces, because of COVID-19, is trying to address what is only essential to core government functions and things that need to be done under a strict timeline. So they were trying to keep that warrant as, shall we say, short as possible. So they recommended delaying 3 of the items that were on there that counted towards 21. The first was the PEG programming equipment for Easthampton Media to procure and install here in this first floor meeting room in Town Hall, since we still are somewhat under doing this business by Zoom rather than in person. The next article, and I believe that was at the time, that was Article 5. The next one was Article 6, which was the $140,000 debt exclusion for the dump truck. And there's a certain pattern that has to follow. If a debt exclusion, in addition to being a borrowing, which requires a 2/3 vote at the meeting, as a debt exclusion, it also requires to go to an election ballot and be voted on by the voters in an election ballot for simply a majority vote passage. If the town meeting vote happens before the election ballot, that there can't be more than 90 days in between the town meeting vote and the election ballot. So in the beginning, my thought process was, well, geez, if we don't put it on for this town meeting, we won't have another election till next May. So we couldn't bring it back in the fall. We couldn't bring it back essentially till next spring. And the truck's in pretty bad shape. So I had recommended doing both now. The piece I forgot about was we could leave it on as an election ballot question for the September 1st election. If we do that, because the election ballot will have taken place, and if it passes, there's no time limit on the other end of how long from that election ballot does the town meeting or special town meeting have to take place to pass by a 2/3 majority at that time. So the theory being, put it on the election ballot for September 1st. Hopefully it will pass, and then we can bring it back in October, November. If we don't have a special, then we could bring back in January, February. We'll have met the non-timeline. It's the only thing bond counsel has said about having the town meeting vote after the election ballot is they suggest it not be too or overly long, so that people don't forget why they voted to approve it at the election ballot. So they have said, 6 months, 8 months is probably reasonable. You wait a couple years and probably they'd look at it a little differently.
Okay. Thank you.
Do you have
And I've
control of the, I don't see Article 1.
Oh, yeah, and the third one, I'm sorry. The third one was they voted to delay the CPC request for building of the 2 new pickleball courts in Conan Park. And that was Article 21.
Could you bring us back to Article 1, Ed?
Okay, I think I can get us back there, maybe. Went by.
I've got about a half an hour because I got an 8 o'clock meeting I'll have to get on.
I didn't think it would last this long myself, but that's, whenever somebody needs to leave, that's fine.
Okay.
So unpaid bills, this is just a housekeeping. That was where I was looking for before. Just as a housekeeping article to pay bills from prior fiscal years because we can't use money from one fiscal year to pay prior fiscal years unless it gets a town meeting vote.
Yep. I'd move Article 1.
Ray seconds.
Okay, roll call. Barbara, yes.
Ken, yes.
Yes.
Ray, yes.
Okay, so Article 2, the annual operating budget. So we're 2 hours into the meeting. Do you folks want to open a spreadsheet and go over the annual operating budget at this meeting? Or do you want to look at it at another meeting before the town meeting?
The latter. I'd recommend the latter.
Okay. How about the rest of you folks?
Are we allowed to recommend to the budget as, I've looked at, I don't want to take away from anybody that wants to look at it, but I've looked at it pretty closely.
Yeah, what can happen is this is obviously the biggest financial part of the town meeting. So Finance Committee, in my opinion, should recommend or not recommend.
Right.
Can you just open this for a minute? I just want to make sure that I completely understand the columns.
Absolutely. Ed, do you have that available?
I'm trying to find out how to get back to it now.
I couldn't open the file, Ed.
Really?
It's a zip file, right?
Well, it probably was so large that it went out that way, so.
No, it's an Excel file. I opened the Excel file.
Yeah, it's an Excel, so.
Yeah, Excel. And it was
I think I know what
8
we're looking
pages.
at. I just want to make sure that that's correct.
Here's my files. Doggone it.
If you want, I can share the screen.
Hang on a second.
Okay.
For some reason, my screen sharing is.
Well, if you've got it open, why don't you just share the screen?
I don't have it open. I can't. My screen sharing is paused.
No, somebody else said they could share it.
Well, let's see. Resume. Stop share. Now let's try this again.
All right, I got it. Now I got it on my Mac. I couldn't get it on my laptop.
Okay. Come on. So now we want. Ah, come on. Get out of my way.
John, if we do this at another meeting, what are timelines? I mean, what are timelines that we have to deal with?
Well, the town meeting is on the 15th. So you could have a meeting next week or the week after.
Okay. I would just as soon, and speaking for myself, I would just as soon like to have time to go through this and not necessarily burden everybody tonight with this, given how long we've already spent, and perhaps convene for another meeting just to deal with this.
I'll second that.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I said, I just want to make sure that I understand what I'm looking at.
Yeah.
So maybe we open it quickly, ask the questions, and that way give you some time to look at them once you ask a couple questions.
Yeah, and I'm gonna have to publish this anyway next week, so I just won't list anything as far as a recommendation, not recommendation, or whatever under the budget article.
Yeah, even though that's the biggest one.
Even though that's
That
the biggest
can
one, like I say, if somebody asks at the annual town meeting, okay, why is it?
But we can also ask the moderator to announce that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So who said that they could share it? If somebody else can share it, can
It's not up?
What?
Isn't it up?
No.
We've got your files in here.
What is going on? See, I've got it up.
No, we can't see anything.
No, we can't see it.
I have it up, but I don't know how to share it with everybody.
The heck is
Ed, can you unshare?
Yeah, sure.
Stop share. Let me try it one more time. Screen share.
No. Let me see if I can.
Go ahead.
Okay, Tom, something's starting.
It's shared.
There we go.
There it is.
No,
Okay.
Okay.
So can you just, Ed, or John, can you just walk us through the columns, or I can tell you what I think they are and you can tell me if they're correct?
Good idea.
Okay, which way do you want to go?
B.
B?
Column B here.
No. Do you want to say what you think they are, or you want us to?
Oh, I see. Okay, so this is basically column B is take the 2020 budget, add 2% to it.
No, that is the approved 2020 budget.
Right,
Okay.
that's what he was
All
saying.
right, that's what we had. Okay, great. And then we had obviously what was wanted for 2021.
Right.
And then I think I'm just going to go over to F. F is what we're actually going to go for.
Correct.
Okay. And I'm not sure what D and E are. I mean, obviously.
Well, D is level funded plus contractual. So the contractual means that, for instance, health insurance, preventive maintenance, software agreements, things that we have to pay out regardless of what our revenue is, something that we have a contract on. So there are some contracts, collective bargaining agreements, where we have in there, say, 1.5% increase for this department. So that's a contract. So we have to pay that. There's no way around that. So
Okay.
That's the level funded plus those contracts.
Okay. And then column E is where you've made some cuts to get a balanced budget for 21.
Right. And column F is the difference.
Okay. And is the 21 budget, I didn't go to the total at the bottom, but are we basically operating at the 2020 budget, or is it the 2020 budget plus 2%?
Well, that's neither really. You want to go with that in on the 1/12th, or?
Well, if somebody wants to scroll down to the bottom, I'll show you the difference.
Okay. Or no, you know what? Actually, we're less, aren't we? Because we're getting less money from the state.
No.
No?
Go ahead, Ed.
Here.
27.
So good Lord. Windows. So let's see. We are. Oh, nuts.
While he's looking, if you look down on lines.
Yeah, so we're at 17,691,925.83 for fiscal year 21 recommendation.
Yep.
17,567,97.03 was what we were at for fiscal year 20. So a little bit more than we were at in fiscal year 20. I believe it's closer to maybe a 1% or what have you.
Could you scroll a little to the left so we can see the beginning of these lines? Yeah, there you go. Okay, thank you.
Yep, so 560 for 20, and then 692 for 21. The request was over 18 million, and you cut back roughly $500,000.
Correct.
Okay.
But if you scroll over to the left again.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, if you look down on lines 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, those are various scenarios that could happen depending on how you look at it. Because right now, we don't know what's going to happen with the budget based on all the issues we're having with revenue due to COVID. So if you look at line 227, we agreed as a select board, that's the line that we're going to use the assumption from. So there's a 1% reduction in Chapter 70 money and a 3% reduction in general government funds. So what that means as you go to the right, the fiscal year 21 revenue on that scenario is projected at 17,691,925, and based on the budget above the next line in column D, by 238,000. So what we did is in column F, we balanced out to zero based on that scenario. But depending on if you went with other scenarios there, other lines, we'd have to balance, take more money out of the budget or add to. But after a lot of discussion, we figured that was the minimum we wanted to use because we really think it's going to be worse than that. So we balanced on that scenario.
You think the revenue is going to be worse than what we
All indications say that we're going to get hit harder than that 1% and 3%. But again, we have our state reps, state senators saying could be up to 20% reduction. But again, like I think I talked about in the beginning, that may be just a very high scenario. So when they come back and say it's only 10, we'll go, oh, not as bad as we thought. We don't know that, but if they come back with a 10%, we're still in trouble because we've used a 1 and a 3.
Yeah, and the state government isn't going forward with their basic budget hearings or moving forward with the budget at this point because they're just waiting to see what the federal government is going to do as far as supplemental help for states and municipalities.
So if if it's a worst case scenario and we're not going to get $150,000 that you're planning to get, then what? Does the budget get cut, or does that mean that the town is going to want to collect additional revenue from the residents through some sort of surcharge?
Well, again, kind of discussed that earlier in the meeting is that we could go back and cut the budgets to make up for that difference. We could use operational stabilization, or we could do a Prop 2.5 override, or any combination of any of them, depending on how bad the scenario is that we have to face.
Okay.
Well, when I calculated it out, it figures out to about a 0.75% increase over the fiscal year 20 approved budget.
Okay. So either way, we don't think this was the last adjustment we're going to have to make. It was painful enough making this.
Yeah, it's just if you make it, as time goes on, there will be less opportunities to make adjustments.
Yeah, there will, and plus, as you may have said it already, Ed, but as we go through this fiscal year, we're using approval of the state to use 1/12 of our budget each month. So we're already through July, and we just got approval to use another 1/12 for August. So any changes we make, especially to expenses or staffing, we're already X amount of months through the fiscal year. So the cumulative effect is going to be a lot worse.
Okay. Well, thank you. This is very helpful for me.
Do you want to still look at this, or do you want to pull this down?
Does anybody else have any questions about the budget before they look at it offline?
So, I'm sorry, the 17,561 relates, the 18,213 is what was requested by the various departments and so forth, right?
Let's go back down to that so we can make sure.
I don't want to belabor this. I just want to make sure I understand this. And yeah.
17,561 was the 2020 approved budget. For 21, the departments asked for 18,213 and change.
Just under 4% increase. 3.7. Yeah.
And where they ended up was 17,692.
Just for a point of reference, remember 2.5 only allows us to go up 2.5%, and this on the departments was a 4% increase. And some of the contractual increases for various, not raises, but maintenance agreements, telephones, power, gas, electric, all that, sometimes go up much more than that 2.5. So you have to, kind of take from one in order to equal a higher level in another area. So.
Right.
Generally, the two biggest ones that cut into any revenue increase every year are retirement, required retirement contribution, and then health, followed closely by health insurance.
Okay. All right, then can we, does it make sense for us to set up another meeting?
Yeah, that would be part of the agenda. Barbara, if you want to take that?
Okay, I'm looking for a motion to set a date, or do I pick out a date?
You don't need a motion for that.
Okay. All right, so we all want to have another meeting soon? How soon? How soon? Suggestion, please?
I don't know, a week?
Why don't we meet this time next week?
Yeah.
Okay. So that would be August
5th.
August 5th at 5 o'clock?
5:30.
5:30. Okay.
So what I'll do is I will put that in the minutes. So let me just write this down. Date 5 at 5:30. I'll put it in the minutes and send it out to everybody so it'll be in there.
Thank you.
Sounds good. Okay.
So I'm going to look at the agenda. There may be things we don't want to do, but okay, budget review, we're doing that next week. Review of fiscal 20 expenditures and revenues. Anything you want to take off now? That's fiscal year is already closed, and we made all the adjustments, year-end adjustments and everything. So really not much to be done unless for some reason you want to see that.
I just want time to study the spreadsheet that you sent. And now that I've gotten some clarification, hopefully we can move forward more comfortably.
And if you have any questions, reach out to Ed or myself. We'll be glad to.
Thank you.
Who's on the line here? Okay, just our group. Let me give you my cell phone number, okay?
Okay.
Make sure there was no outside folks there. 626 00.
Hey, John.
What?
Don't forget, this is going to be uploaded into the videos. So why don't you send it to them?
Okay. In a separate email, I will send you all my cell phone. Thank you, Ed.
Well, since you
That's good.
blackballed me from being able to text to you, I probably should have just let you go on.
I appreciate it.
I switched to a different company, and I got people that can't text me. So if you get a message, you try to text me, and you get a message saying you're blocked, I'm not blocking you. Just call me, okay?
Okay. And you're
I know
going to
Adam
email,
got through okay.
and you're going to email your
So,
number to us.
yeah.
No, you're going to text it or whatever.
So I'm gonna email it to you folks separately, just as a group. Ed's got it already.
Perfect.
Hey, John,
Yes.
it's Ray again. So just for clarification again, who shows up at the ATM in terms of our committee? Is it just one of us, all of us, some of us?
Normally, everybody shows up from the finance committee and the select board, and along with the town accountant and moderator and clerk and all that. So again, it's a COVID issue. If anybody has any health issues they're worried about, we're taking precautions. Everybody's required to wear a mask. We're having microphones set up, and there will be microphone covers. And the vendor that's running all that will change covers in between speakers and all that. We're gonna have social distances with chairs and all that. But it's still, and anybody that's not a registered voter cannot come into the meeting. It's at the ball field, so there's a fence around it, and we can't tell people that they have to wear a mask. The police chief says that's not enforceable, so we're going to ask them to sit in an area separate. That part still worries me a little bit, but
Left field.
And then, just so you know, that under these unusual circumstances, there's going to be a table that would normally be for the select board members, which is going to just have the chair of the select board at it. There'll be the moderator's podium. There'll be a table for the assistant moderator and the clerk. And then there'll be another table, which is a 6-foot table. It's going to have 2 microphones on it. One is for the chair of the finance committee, and at the other end of it will be a microphone and a chair for the town accountant.
Are you going to need volunteers for setup and breakdown for this, or?
well, we have 4 or 5 people that are starting at 7 o'clock in the morning to set up chairs and tables and all that. And come 8 o'clock, the gates open. We've got Lucy Dalton, our clerk, has people set up for that table. We're having EMS, police, ambulance, porta potties, and all that stuff. So we're pretty good. If you want to show up 7 o'clock and help us put out chairs and tables, you're more than welcome.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Appreciate the offer.
We have donuts?
I kidded about that. I said, I'll bring donuts, and people looked at me like, whoa, they have to be individually wrapped, I think.
All right. Are we good?
Anything I should know before I go to the meeting?
Well, we got the next meeting. It says a line that says liaison reports. We can talk about that later. But normally, the finance committee, like the select board, they have liaison to, say, a select board or to other committees. But we can talk about that next meeting.
Okay.
There's a line that says any other necessary business that can't wait until the next regular meeting. That's just a catch line in case we forget to put something on the agenda that we need to discuss. So that covers it. Yeah. And then number 13, lucky 13 is adjourn the meeting, Barbara.
Okay. All in favor? Is that what I say?
You need a motion in a second.
Oh, I want a motion to,
Adjourn the meeting.
So moved. Do adjourn.
okay. All right. So then we say goodbye?
Who did the second on that?
Adam, I think.
Did the first.
Raymond, I think.
Ken.
Okay, we're going to credit Ray with the motion and Adam with the second. Is that good?
Give it to Ken. No, I was mute over here. Go ahead.
Ken.
Give it to Ken.
Ken and Adam, okay.
All right.
Hey, thank you all very much. Hopefully it didn't take too much of your time away, and we'll reconvene next week. We'll send out a Zoom. Ed, will you send out a Zoom?
Yes, I will.
Okay, great. Okay, if you have any questions in between, give Ed or I a call, okay?
All right.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you, everybody.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Yes.
Nice.
Thanks, Matt.
Thank you all.
Take care.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Thank you. Have a good night. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt.